Welcome to AI PHYSEC today, the first and only podcast dedicated to diving deep into how AI is reshaping the physical security industry. I'm your host, Don Marone, and today we've got something truly special lined up for you. Get ready to meet the brilliant minds behind the AI Operator from HiveWatch. In this power-packed episode, both co-founders join us for an in-depth discussion about the groundbreaking tech that's set to redefine our industry. But before we dive into their insights, I want to set the stage with their jaw-dropping promo video. Honestly, it says more than any intro I could ever dream up, so sit back, hit play, and see for yourself why this is a game changer. Let's get started.
Happy Tuesday, guys.
Welcome to another episode of AI PHYSEC today. Today we've got Jordan Hill and Ryan Schoenfeld, who are the co-founders of HiveWatch. We've had them on an earlier season episode. We're really glad to have them back again today. We're going to talk about all things AI Operator. And so super excited to have you guys back. Welcome again, Jordan, Ryan.
Good to be back, Don. How's it going?
Thanks, Don.
I told them that I was having my West Coast outfit on, so that could be as cool as them. Getting out of the East Coast, button up, white pull down.
Damn, I put on my East Coast outfit.
That's it. So we're switching today. Yeah, I had a few questions for me to get to know the AI Operator. You guys just had a recent launch. The video was super sick. Hit on a lot of the high points. But I figured today we go deep dive into all things AI Operator for HiveWatch. And so while it's more of a product-centric session, I think it's important to talk about because I feel like this is the start of an evolution for the industry. You guys are really hitting on something super important around agents or something like agents that I've been pumped about for a long time. So let's just get into it. First question is, let's talk about the origins of this innovation. What specific challenges in the security industry inspired the development of the HiveWatch AI Operator?
I don't think we have enough time to talk through the long list of challenges, but I half joke because I love the industry. I come from the industry, and I want to improve the industry. And so I'm not here to shit talk an industry that I love and that I think is important. But the reality is, like, physical security is probably 8 to 10 years behind many of the other industries, including cyber. And while we've made huge strides both as an industry and, as HiveWatch as a company over the past few years in terms of driving efficiency in programs and helping with scalability and reducing alarms and less reliance on just like human capital to do all of the ongoing tasks, the reality is, like, you look at the business of security and what people are spending their time and effort on, and the vast majority of it is getting spent on things that don't really move the needle and aren't really that effective. They're not proactive. It's really still alarm chasing. And so no matter how much we or any other company does in terms of false alarm reduction, we really had to look at, how do we help organizations move the needle? How do we help them get more proactive in their security posture? And how do we start tackling sort of this low-hanging fruit, mundane tasks that not only adds little to no value to the organization, but also as we look at challenges across the industry with recruitment and retention, that exponentially increases the complexity to these organizations. Because even if you could deal with all of the alarms, you probably don't have enough people to do it. And you're losing institutional knowledge every time your 80 to 300% annual turnover happens. And so that's sort of the origin of the why. And then the why now, I think, is an important part of that too. And Jordan can go more into the technical side of it, but for a few years now, we've been driving this efficiency in operations. We've saved millions and millions of dollars for customers across people spend and guard spend and duplicative tech, generated huge amounts of data that we're able to leverage to help drive efficiency across the program. And while I cringe sometimes to even say the letters AI out loud, just because of what I think it's meant in the industry for a long time and sort of the fallacy and the buzzwords behind it, the reality is the tech is truly at a point now where, when applied to the right things, it can be hugely effective. And that's why we've chosen to start with the agent, and we've started to tackle some of the low-hanging fruit that we've started with. And we're not trying to boil the ocean or do everything at once. But I think the industry needs to prove to the industry that the technology is not only here, but that it's viable, that it works, and that it can be really helpful to their program.
Fair enough. Yeah, it seems that getting rid of the mundane, as you put it, to me, it only gives an opportunity to elevate people into doing something that they probably would prefer otherwise, right? I think everybody in their day job could say that this is my night job, would say to a degree of what they really hate to do. And a lot of times I find that it's a repetitive, mundane, something not meaningful to them, something they don't feel that's elevating them as a person. And certainly this seems to be able to do that, right? I mean, if we were able to hit through nuisance alarms and tackling these false alarms, which is the next topic I'd like to hit on, it just makes sense. This is where the technology is helping us, and this is where it's taken us. So on that note about tackling false alarms, so this AI operator claims to reduce false alarms. Can you walk us through how it achieves this in a real world scenario or scenarios?
It reduces false alarms in the way that now a human doesn't need to be able to review it. And so you can start still cataloging the data that there are these false alarms that are being generated that you can log later to understand the system health of your different devices. But that human now isn't generating leather skin to those alarms. You just mentioned before that one of the things that you loathed was going through and clicking through all these alarms where most of them didn't really mean anything to you. And frankly, probably made you less sensitive to the next ones of them being a really real security incident. And so what we've built with the AI operator is, how do you actually have the quality of, this is the first and only alarm that you're dealing with at that high level of accuracy with no reference of leather skin to a particular incident, and processing it in that fashion. Even if it goes through 99% false alarms, it'll look at that alarm like it was the first alarm that saw that day. And so you'll actually not have that situation where you're going to lose the actual one time where it's a critical alarm, because that'll get flagged and it'll go to the human. And the human's experience will be like, man, the AI sent me an alarm, I better check it out. Because there's a high level of accuracy there that it is something that I'm going to care about, or at least be interesting.
what I find also fascinating is that these operators have a lot more to do than look at these systems, right? I think Ryan, you have a
100%.
background. I know you do, specifically like in this space, and so the operator is doing more than just looking at their access control and video surveillance system. They've
Well, they're
got
supposed
to
to be
do
doing more.
executive management and all this other stuff, right?
Yeah, they're supposed to be doing more, but the reality is in many cases they can't. And that was part of the point of the video that we produced, is like, you've got this operator who's got this long to-do list of tasks that they're supposed to get through, and they can't get through that list of tasks because they're spending their shift chasing alarms. And we know as an industry that on the positive end, 95% of the alarms are false. The reality is, I think that number is actually higher. And so you look at the value for time spent, and it's just not there.
Yeah. Jordan, I'm going to take your leather skin comment and keep that one in my back pocket. I've used the term warm bodies before, talking about AI, but leather skin's way more fun. Especially because I spent some time in Florida, so I've acquired my fair share of leather skin. But yeah, so let's talk about a strategic intelligence overload. So how does the AI operator transform traditional alert processing into actionable strategic intelligence for security teams?
So what we do is we tried to mimic the user experience. Well, I mean, look, let's take a step back. And the way that folks would typically try to level up is that, look, I don't want to be resolving these alarms. Let me hire an operator to specifically focus on it. I'll then give the operator a standard operating procedure of how I would want these alarms to be solved or resolved when I want to get bothered about something as the supervisor or program manager, and the actions that they need to take. And so for the AI operator, the user experience is very similar to that. You upload your SOPs that are going to run the analysis of the video, the response, the devices that it's responsible for, even the time frame that it's going to look at it, because maybe there's a different SOP for night than there is during the day or business hours. And then it takes those actions. And so what we at HiveWatch are doing are building out the analysis capability and the different tool set that that operator has to be able to take action in a customer system.
And this might be a little premature. It could be into another question later, but maybe could you walk us through at a high level, maybe a little bit more specifics around that analysis that it's running through?
So think about a standard operating procedure that your typical operator would have. And in traditional SOCs, that might be sitting there in a paper binder. It might be in a SharePoint or Confluence file drive site. But as an alert or something comes into the Security Operations Center, the operator goes to their SOP and they review it, and then they use that to analyze the scene or whatever data they have. And then they reference the SOP for what the next steps are or the next course of action. That's everything that's happening in the AI operator, except all of that's automated and you're removing the human from it. And so it's a good time to differentiate what we're doing from sort of the traditional AI that we've seen in the space before, which is computer vision or just general analytics, where in computer vision, you're training models for a specific application, a specific use case. And so if we want a slip and fall analytic, or we want people detection, or we want weapon detection, like, you have to train models specific for that use case. That is not what the AI operator is. It is not a computer vision product. The reason we've worked with Anthropic to put this AI operator on top of Claude in this case is so that each scene can be fully analyzed for what it is. And the model takes the SOP and compares all of the data points. And those data points are specific to the end user. So what Don cares about at his company, at that particular facility, at that particular door, at that time of day, may be different in terms of what you view as suspicious or actionable, will be different than how Jordan views that in his organization, at his facility, at that time of day, at that particular type of door. And so you're able to have that level of customization down to that level of granularity without having to do huge amounts of configuration, without having to do a specific training of models for each of the types of detection that you're trying to accomplish, and you're able to do that at scale with very minimal effort. And I think that's really kind of the power and the scalability of the AI operator, more so than just saying, hey, we're going to apply an analytic to your cameras.
Yeah, there's two things I really like there. One is that you guys have clear domain knowledge, and when you're fine tuning these things, domain knowledge is super important. Otherwise, like prompting, fine tuning these things based on assumptions when you're not really in the space doesn't help. And I know it helps that you guys have a lot of customers that are specifically the GSOC type customers, and then Ryan, you have a background. I know that, so that's a big deal. Yeah, and I like the personalization. I went to San Francisco a couple of months back in September. They had the AI conference there, and one of the big things they said that's coming, and it's happening in our iPhones right now, is a build up towards personalization based on user context, right? So what happens is our phones, you'll see Apple Intelligence is in like everything. It's attached to everything at this point. It's in the background, and then once they're opening their APIs so that way action models or action agents within your device, like within maybe AI operator, looks at how the user uses the system, and that's the context it learns to deliver a personal approach. That's incredible. I didn't realize you guys were going to that level, and I think that's a next stage thing that I thought would come later in the industry, but it's really great to hear that you're doing that. Let's talk about that Claude piece a little bit more. So I've got a question. So why was Anthropic's Claude chosen as a foundation for the AI operator, and what unique advantages does it bring to physical security?
I'll give you the business answer, and Jordan can go more in the weeds technically, but there's a couple of key things that we look at as a company that's like building a product that has to be commercially viable. And so aside from testing things to see who performs the best, one of the big challenges in selling to the enterprise and selling to government and selling to these different types of organization is data privacy, it's AI governance, and it's what you're doing with people's data. In a lot of cases, people will say, yeah, we love AI conceptually, but we can't actually utilize it in our environment because our legal doesn't like the use of data, or we can't share our data with third parties. And so one of the really big things for us, aside from the really effective performance of Claude, was that we're able to host the models completely within customers' environments and not share any data outside to other third parties or data providers. And so from an information security standpoint and a data privacy, AI governance, like it becomes a much easier conversation with these organizations to say, great, we see the business value of this, and also it conforms with the requirements that we have around how we protect our data.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess I'll comment on that, and Jordan, we'll get your feedback on it, on your thoughts on why Anthropic Claude. But from what I've seen, Anthropic continues to be the leaderboard among Hugging Face of foundation models. It's got a lot of people that came from OpenAI, but that wanted to build a safer version of that. And it seems to be the one closed source model that is probably the most popular in the world. And I'm sure for a lot of those reasons that you mentioned, it actually continues to perform at a high level in STEM and coding. I'm sure probably Jordan makes it really effective in the background to run these actions. So yeah, I'm really glad that you guys are looking at that and not using OpenAI API call, which is like a dump. But I'd be curious to learn more. Maybe Jordan, you guys had to adopt some sort of graph rag or something else to bring things together. But curious to get your take on why Anthropic Claude.
Well, just on a performance aspect, it's been fantastic. And then Ryan mentioned from a security side, like we're dealing with security data. Like we want to make sure that it's housed specifically in a customer's environment so that they can actually make use of it and it doesn't go to train somebody else's algorithm and go through that whole spiral. We want to get solutions in customers' hands. When it comes to the actual product itself, Anthropic's really made Claude super easy to work with for developers specifically. If you look at the revenues, OpenAI and Anthropic are actually on par when it comes to like development revenue. And so like they've been focusing much more on that development aspect. Their context windows are larger, which means that you can send more data per request. which is great when you're working with camera feeds. The actual performance is at a really high quality, and they'll be able to give you a lot of context that you can pare down. And it's been frankly delightful to work with from an infrastructure standpoint. They have partnerships with AWS that makes it really easy to be able to hook up Claude locally into our customer-specific environments, which has been great for InfoSec or legal concerns. So it's been, every time I've used or built with it and had an intended use case, it far surpassed my expectations in terms of quality and output in a way that has really excited me about getting this in customers' hands.
Yeah, the market would definitely agree with that for sure, at least what I've read. And I'm sure you've probably seen Anthropic's ability to run, how can I say this, run operations in a computer where it basically just kind of clicks around on its own and does its own thing. So maybe that's a version 2 or
new
something.
Computer use API.
What's that?
The new computer use API.
Yeah. So maybe that's something to look forward to as well.
There's lots to look forward to. Yeah, I assure you.
So let's talk customizable SOPs. So how does the AI operator adapt to the unique standard operating procedures of each organization it serves? So we mentioned things like personalization, right? You mentioned things where it's living in their own environment. When you roll this out to a customer, how does this quickly mold around their specific environment?
It's the same way that you would roll out or train a human GSOC operator to a customer's environment. So Don, you're new in the GSOC and we bring a site online and we're going to give you a standard operating procedure to review, or you're going to look at that SOP real time when an incident happens and determine what your next steps are. That's exactly what happens here in the AI operator. So there's not a sort of traditional process of we have to go site by site and configure every possible scenario that we may or may not be able to imagine. We use our SOPs to drive what the AI does, how it interprets the scene, and what actions it takes. And in the first version of it, the actions that the AI is allowed to take autonomously are limited by design. But as we build more trust with it within individual customers, the thesis is that the customers will allow us to open up that a little bit more broadly in terms of what actions we're allowing the AI to take. Whereas today we're, dispatching guards, resolving incidents, leaving comments, escalating stuff to human operators. But the possibilities of what it can do are much broader than that. It's not a technical limitation right now. It's really a sort of industry perception, understanding of technology that's limiting what we're going to allow it to do.
Yeah, I mean, would you say that the foundation model has opened its ability to do that? Was that a capability before to easily roll out, let's say, AI to a GSOC if it was a brand new customer that wasn't using HiveWatch or AI operator, so maybe 6 months ago? Was it about the same process to roll out, or has that changed?
No, that's a much more recent change. And the evolution of the tech is just something that Jordan and his team have continued to evaluate. And it was finally at a point where we're like, hey, this is viable, and it's viable for these use cases initially. And so let's run fast on figuring out how we can get this into customers' hands and iterate very quickly, because all of those foundational companies are iterating faster than any of us could ever dream of. And so in terms of the speed of the evolution of their technology, ours will never go that fast. And our customers, frankly, in this industry wouldn't know what to do with evolution that fast. And so for us, it's the tech's at a place where we can trust it now and do the things that we're allowing it to do initially. And there's just a lot of education and trust building and all of that that's going into these initial customers that are going to use it, so that they can go out and be advocates for the technology and the industry too.
Yeah, I love, I've talked about this before, but I doubt many people in the industry are going to build their custom, manufacturers will, right? But I'm not talking models. I'm talking about their own products, right? I actually had a history where a customer had a camera vision team and built a camera vision product for a fast food product, and on their own. They didn't reach out to anyone. They had their own engineers, and that's it.
We know a couple that are doing that now.
What's that?
I know a couple that are doing that now.
Yeah. And But when it comes to security stuff, right, I feel like there's still a much better avenue where it's all productized, right? So they're looking to companies like HiveWatch to say, hey, take me to market faster because my security team doesn't have a $10 million budget or something to build this out, right? And I think that's the way that to me, that AI will be to continue to be consumed at masses in our industry. It's funny. I was at, I don't think we talked about this last time, but I was at one of our reseller events with Honeywell, and I asked a question to some of the dealers, and I'm like, hey, on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being you've used ChatGPT and 5 being you build data solutions, where do you sit in that? And my answer is different when I'm in the industry versus when I'm out. If I'm like in the West Coast IT, I'm like maybe 0.5, and then I come into the industry and I could probably be like a 2.5 or something like that. I had someone say they were a 4, and I'm like, do tell, right? Because I'm like, what are you building? You must be building something. And they're like, well, we use this AI camera, this AI VMS. And I'm like, but it's their perception, right? But I think the reality is for most the integrators, the end users, it seems like in this space that it's unlikely that they're going to build their own thing unless it's a huge company, unless it solves a massive problem, then maybe. And to that end, like I use the example of the fast food place, they didn't think that's not a security thing. That's a operational improvement. But who's to say that there's a future that doesn't happen where you're able to use vision models, right? These foundation vision models to ask for things that are irregular, that are not necessarily just built into the system. So we'll see. I do want to get back to some of the day-to-day security stuff. So when we talk about enhanced security operations, how does the AI operator improve day-to-day security operations and shift teams from the mundane task, Ryan, you mentioned this earlier, to high-value strategic activities?
So I can talk to the first part of just like the immediate up level. Your quality of response is going to increase dramatically. The AI operator will immediately reduce all of your acknowledgement times to under a minute, probably your resolution times to under a minute, definitely 2. And then you'll be able to have much more sensitive operators to real critical alarms. You're going to start having you'll be able to respond much quicker. You'll be able to scale across more footprint. You won't need as many folks to be able to just manage the alarm volume. And those people can then focus more on what are the types of investments that I need to make to improve the quality of the program.
I think you're also enabling the organizations to invest more in their people. So you talk about like issues with recruitment and retention in the industry. That's a huge problem for us. And looking at how we build more satisfaction in jobs, how we retain employees, and when we get them out of doing the repetitive, mundane tasks, the people have freed up time for the organization to invest in their growth and upskilling and up-leveling those folks. So somebody who maybe started as a slightly above minimum wage guard or operator can start learning about intel and can start learning about risk and can, have career advancement and learn new skills that not only add more value to the organization they're working for, but that bolster their resume for their career at their current site, wherever they're going to go next. And it becomes kind of a win-win all around.
Yeah, nobody rises to low expectations. And I think the more opportunity they have to be able to set themselves to a higher expectation, the more they could rise. And this seems like it does just that. You did mention, Ryan, about turnover. I don't know the answer to this, but I know the guarding part there's a very high turnover. What's the turnover look like in a GSOC environment?
In the US for third-party staff SOCs, which is the majority, it's about 80% annual turnover compared to the guard business, which is like 100 to 300% annually. So that one's much higher. But if you look at, guarding is, for the most part, easier to onboard and train a new guard. When you bring somebody on in the SOC, average time to onboard a SOC operator is 2 to 4 weeks, and they're usually having to learn at least 20 to 40 different pieces of software and technology to do their job. So the cost of poor retention in the SOC is exponentially higher than the cost of poor retention for guard posts in most cases.
You know what? And more reason to have a platform. I actually haven't. I've spent a little bit of time with HiveWatch. I probably should spend more time, but to me, it's like maybe there's an aspect where I have a platform and I'm logging into one thing. It centralizes all my alarms. That would assume that I would drop the need to have to intimately know 20 systems when I need to focus on one. Is that some of the idea? Do you
Exactly
so
right.
it sound like you found the
Yeah.
sweet spot there?
So, and one of the things that Jordan and his team have done so well is focus on the core user of our system. And I think this is a challenge that bothered me as an end user for years, is that these systems are built for the directors and the VPs who walk around trade shows and buy products, and it's built to appeal to them and the things that they want to see. But the reality is those folks rarely, if ever, log into the system. And then you've got this generally relatively unsophisticated primary user of the system who lives in it 8 to 12 hours a day, dealing with hundreds to thousands of alarms and sort of this monotonous stuff, but the systems aren't built for them. And so the reason it takes 2 to 4 weeks to train and onboard an operator is it's not only the number of systems, it's the complexity of each of them. And Jordan's team has built a product with a user interface that is easy to use, it's intuitive, it's built for the operator. One of our bars is, can we train an operator to be proficient in the product in an hour or less? If the answer is no, it's too complicated. If we release a new module, we should be able to get them proficient in that new module in 30 minutes or less. If we can't do that, it's too complicated. Those things are important to retention. They're important as you start thinking about programs holistically and the cost of security and the business of security and, retention, and all of those things move the needle and make a difference.
Seems like going from 2 to 3 weeks down to 30 minutes is a pretty good proposition to me.
It's a great one. It's not to say that we're the only system they have to learn, but as sort of the platform that runs the SOC, it's a really big part of it.
Yeah. So that did hit on actually the next question that I had, which we don't need to cover, but that was around operator efficiency and turnover. I am curious around the reliability of the prediction, right? So like obviously, and I asked the question, but it does pertain to hallucinations of models, right? And what that might look like as something so important as security. And so when we talk in terms of real-time decision making, with the ability to analyze, escalate, and respond to alarms in real time, what safeguards are in place to ensure the AI operators' decisions are reliable?
Well,
So
let me
before,
ask you a douchey question back before Jordan gives you the real answer. But what safeguards are in place to ensure that your human operators are assessing the alarm correctly and responding accordingly? And it's not to say that like that's our bar for success, but Jordan can give you the more technical answer. But the reality, and this is something we've learned over the last few years being in SOCs and measuring data, not to disparage the people that work in SOCs, but like the effectiveness is not very high. And so,
especially with the turnover, when you have to constantly
100%.
retrain, it's even worse. And I agree with you 100%. I mean, what is it? I know Motorola said this a long time ago, but the attention span is super short with people. I mean, this is like a public knowledge, but I think our attention span is like 20 seconds. So, unless we do a joke every 30 seconds, the audience is going to lose us. You know what I mean? And so it's pretty short.
Screen fatigue from watching cameras sets in between 8 and 12 minutes, and you're running 8 to 12 hour shifts with minimal breaks. And so Jordan's earlier point about like every alarm that the AI sees is the first time that it's dealt with something and the first time that it's seeing it is really significant in terms of thinking about how you maintain consistent quality across everything you're doing. But Jordan, you can talk a little bit about how we think about that technically.
yeah. So what we're doing right now is before it even hits a customer environment, AI operator is trained on a large library of event types that we then do evaluation for. Every time we do new releases, anytime we do any of that, we have this whole testing framework that we have set up. So we've already kneaded out some of the obvious pains that are there. And then we work together with our alpha customers to be able to see, okay, what are these other edge cases that may be coming through? How can we make these improvements? We're using a lot of like the next gen for frameworks and AI like application development. And so to pair with another douchey metaphor, how often are operators thrown through a similar set of rigorous tests and Olympiads to be able to know that their performance is coming out the same?
Yeah.
I think a unique differentiator for us that we're really proud of is we run a GSOC. And so we're not just a company building software and building cool technology, but like this company existed before it was a software company as a GSOC company. And we have a live GSOC where we get to test this stuff and see real data coming in and test data against production. And so that's, as a software company, that's a pretty big advantage for us in terms of how we build things and where and how we get to test them.
I feel like it gets asked, right, about how these things hallucinate. But if the foundation model is grounded on clear information that's graphed, so it's easy to get to, but it's using just the LLM in this case, maybe as just natural language understanding, but it's not trying to reach out to the web to ask to give them like a recipe for their next banana pudding or something, right? It's grounded in specific information that's related to what it should be doing. Which is interesting because going back to Ryan, the comment, and by the way, no douchey comments because I'm consuming all the douchebag with this outfit, so it's okay.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
No, you look cool, Don.
So it's something to me that I feel like, a lot of people, when they think about if it hallucinates, in our minds as a human, we have so many things that go through our mind that distract us. And in some sense, that's when we don't ground. When we're supposed to be at work, our 8 to 5, and we're supposed to focus on the tasks that we have, grounding would mean that we're focused basically a high percentage of the time. But that's not true. People are probably on their phones, or maybe they're thinking about what they're going to go to dinner for that night. And so they're starting to hallucinate because their attention span is short. And this just seems like it brings it all together, and what a lot of people would probably say, augmenting people to improve their abilities.
Well, and I think you have an extra safeguard in place there too, in that a lot of products say, take my word for it, and the AI or the rules or the automation is going to perform a task. And in our case, we actually surface to the operator, to the supervisor, exactly what the AI did, what its interpretation was, the actions it took relative to the SOP. So you're able to see right there in the incident response exactly what happened and why.
And you can also tune whether or not that's the response you want.
Oh, you can tune that more? How so?
Yeah, we have a function where you can basically give it a positive feedback or negative feedback with explicit like context. And then
so
it'll be like positive's good. Yeah, you reinforce positive. If negative, you reinforce negative with a Y. And so that helps our product team in development, and it also helps automate like the tuning of that model to be able to get that perfect response that you want. Again, back to building the UX of how would you train your people? You would give them feedback, or you tell them good job.
And how often do they actually take that feedback? And in this case, how often do they stick around to learn from that feedback? Not that we've ever had one-on-ones that didn't go as planned. So I want to shift a little bit, go a little bit deeper beyond the hallucination, but this is for the security people, right? I feel like the security people, when I started the podcast some 17 episodes ago, a lot of the discussion started with, how do we trust this stuff? What's the data privacy aspect of it, right? And so at the risk of any repetition, I am curious on the data security and privacy side, how does HiveWatch ensure the sensitive customer data remains secure while using AI capabilities powered by Anthropic, right? So I know you mentioned earlier that it's not learning off of other people's data. It's not going out to the web. Maybe it's within I don't know if it's within their instance or this is a multi-tenant. I don't know how that goes. But if we're talking to security folks, which is pretty much the audience that we have, how does HiveWatch secure that sensitive customer data?
Yeah, you said it all. Our existing customers are living in individual tenants, and all of their data resides purely within those environments. So, aside from SOC 2 and all of the other security controls and stuff that we have in place and have had in place from the beginning, the introduction of the AI operator doesn't change or reduce any of those controls. All of that is exactly the same and just as strong as it's always been.
Yeah, this is a AI security product that's designed for security people, not just from the UX, but to the inevitable compliance that they're going to need to do.
And I think there was an awesome announcement a couple of weeks ago where Anthropic and Palantir and AWS announced their partnership, but also approval for use of Claude in classified environments through that partnership. And the reason they're able to do that is exactly what we're talking about. It's through the lockdown hosting of these models within isolated environments, and so you're not sacrificing performance and technology for security, and that goes back to exactly why we chose to do this product with Anthropic.
Has HiveWatch always worked in have y'all always worked in like a single tenant for each customer?
We have.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's awesome. I didn't know that. So I mean, because that tells me a lot of people that are going to productize AI are, I'm sure somewhere in their IT security white paper having to call out that customers, it's going to learn potentially off of their data and whether or not they can turn that on or off. But with your side, you don't have to worry about that at all. It literally can't be a part of, well, maybe it can within their own environment, right? But it doesn't go up to, the bigger.
The learning is a feature for the security program manager, not for Claude, not for us.
Yeah, good. All right, so let's talk success with early adopters. So what feedback have you received? I know that just came out, so this might be a little bit too early, but maybe you've done some beta tests. What feedback have you received from early adopters among the customers you work with, and has it influenced the AI operator's development at all? Which maybe not, because it just came out.
Customers are excited. I think people are excited to see what it can actually do, and frankly, does this deliver on the promise of AI that people have been hearing about for a long time? And that's up to us to prove to them. In terms of initial production use has been in our internal and GSOC environments. Our first customers will start using it in production in their environments in January.
So human AI collaboration, how do you see the AI operator changing the role of security operators, if at all? And what new skills might they need to succeed in the AI-driven environment?
I think the big part is that the humans are going to be dealing with more of the real security response. Humans are going to be doing work that needs a human. And so the AI operator is just enabling that. You're going to get more of the action. You're going to only get surface the alarms that actually have something unique or interesting to deal with. So you can fit that 20-second attention span with only hitting like high quality, actual hits, actual response, managing the response. And then in your downtime, you're thinking about how to improve the program or where you can do touch-ups, not having to clear operational alarms, because it's really, really difficult to be able to manage a humongous queue of operational work and create that space for like the strategic and design thinking. And I think that's where, when Ryan mentions, like, look, how are we going to level these folks up? Like, that's where the real opportunity comes from. People are going to be able to think more holistically, more broadly. And when there's action, like, there's actually action.
Yeah, there was a thing I posted, but this isn't anything new, but it talks about basically how AI is not going to replace your jobs, but it's going to replace the people that don't use AI or something like that, right? And so this is like the perfect opportunity for the operators to say, hey, listen, I want a job in the next 10 years plus. I need to get involved with this. I think, Ryan, you said it right too. Everybody's heard about this hype with AI. It's just a cloud of smoke and mirrors until it actually is used in the real world and you're bringing it to them. And so this is their opportunity to really level up, not just their business today, but their future careers. I talk also a lot about back office too. It's not just security. They use a lot of back office tools, maybe like Microsoft Copilot. Simple things on a day-to-day just enhance their abilities. I remember sometime last year, I was sending these emails, and if I was having a bad day, I would say, be more empathetic, right? And it would send like this awesome email. And someone's like, oh my God, thank you. This is amazing. I'm like, you're welcome. Even though I put in like a few different things and I just asked it to, to play nice or something because it was a rough day. The point is that outside the joke, the point is that there's so many opportunities for it to take over things for us so we can focus on a lot of things that we really find value in our life. And so, as users, not only just looking at HiveWatch's solution, but I think also just in your day to day, both personally and professionally. I just made my wife a new AI headshot, right? And it was like $30, and she's got like 50 images versus a pro headshot that'd be like outside in the heat or in the cold, and it's like $500 or $1,000, right, or whatever it is. There's just so many opportunities to look at this stuff to see where it can help beyond just security.
My biggest recommendation for folks has been just like use these different models for for tasks that you would already be doing yourself, just to try it, just to see what it's capable of. Because I think those aha moments are really like what starts unlocking the creativity of new things.
That's how it started for me. I was asking Jordan questions that were probably annoying him. And he was like, hey, can you put that in Claude? And I got annoyed at his response. And then he sent me a link to Claude. And I put it in and I was like, holy shit, this is really good. And then I used it a couple more times that day and was immediately hooked. But it was sort of monotonous, boring, editing, writing. It was, basic things. It didn't mean that like all of it, like Claude's not going to take my job as CEO at HiveWatch, but it's certainly making it a lot easier.
When you felt that magical moment with Claude, like when does that magical moment hit the security industry? When do we use something and then it's like, whoa, like this is incredible?
I'll tell you what, it's been hitting the security industry one at a time as these end users see the AI operator for the first time.
Nice.
And that has been over the last 2 weeks because we started showing it to customers and folks about a week before the announcement that we're in this early adopter program. It's been pretty magical to see the reactions and hear the responses, and people who have long careers in the industry, many of whom are not particularly technical, and to see their ability to understand what they just saw and how applicable it is to their program. That's magical to me because I think of the last 3 to 4 years of HiveWatch and how much educating we have to do for the customer around their technology and their program and what we're doing and how it works. And this is really one of the first times that I've shown something and it just sort of magically clicked on its own. And I think that that's really cool. And the next really cool step will be them seeing it have that same effect in their production environment.
Yeah, that's a great feeling to have when you have a customer that they look at something and within a few seconds, it's got you. They see it. They say, "Take my money." And where were you all my life?
But it's not even a customer. It's literally every single one we've shown it to, and that's really
Nice.
What's crazy about it.
So the hit rate is pretty good.
Fantastic.
I'll take it all day.
So speaking of money, let's talk about reducing costs and enhancing ROI. So how does the AI operator create measurable ROI for security teams while reducing their operational costs? Right now, I want to keep that in context to the AI operator, right? So if we've got, whether it's a HiveWatch customer that's looking to do this add-on, and again, I don't know how it's sold or whatever, or it's a new customer that's looking to bring on HiveWatch, maybe and AI operator. How do they take a look at this and they, maybe your teams or your sellers or your sales team is helping them through that measurable ROI? But when they look at something like this, because to me, it's obvious, and it seems like to them, they have that immediate effect of, wow, but how do they create, or how does the AI operator create measurable ROI with this tool?
I like that you said measurable ROI because I think historically in our industry, security leaders have used sort of fear and or
risk.
If these things don't happen, then we haven't lost our entire brand and everybody didn't die. And sure, like risk has a cost associated with it, but I think our industry's been historically pretty bad at the business of security and truly quantifying ROI in a way that's measurable. And so there's some really basic, easy ones that we use all the time that could be, if we're reducing people, how many operators can you reduce? How many guards can you reduce? If you're looking at time spent per incident, like it's not very hard to calculate what it costs you to deal with an alarm. And if you have 100,000 alarms a year or 1,000,000 alarms a year, you multiply that dollar amount per alarm, and that's your cost. In the first version of this, before we even talked about it internally with the company, we just sort of built a shitty prototype of what is now the AI operator. It was 10x faster at dealing with the average alarm and 10 times cheaper when you look at the average cost per alarm. And that's data from our current customers that they've built themselves in terms of what it costs them to deal with individual alarms. Now it's been optimized more since then and will continue to get optimized over time. But tell me many technological things that you can plug into your program and have a 10x cost optimization without 6 months, a year, 2 years of training and tweaking and modeling it. I don't think our industry's really ever seen that.
Not to mention being able to increase the capacity that you can deal with.
Yeah, and I think it's such an evolution from, let's just say, standard machine learning into this. It seems like the scalability or the value is so much bigger. You're mentioning 10x, and that's a big return.
That's 10x is unoptimized.
Unoptimized. Okay.
Yeah. That was our prototype.
So what is optimized now? Like 1 million? What is it?
100 million. Yeah. No, I don't know. That's false advertising, but we're working through that. We're not ready to say publicly yet, but I assure you it will be greater than 10x.
No, I like that. Yeah, I mean, it just got released literally a week ago, so I'm sure we'll hear more.
Yeah, and I think you talk about the business of security, right? You've got cost reduction and you've got cost avoidance, and both of those are very applicable here. So you've got sort of teams that are sort of minimal staffing right now, and you can't cut people because you're at minimum staffing, but the expectations of the business on security are not getting lighter. They're expecting you to do more with the same. And so there's a quantifiable ROI there to say, okay, we can take on these additional responsibilities to add value to the business without having to add 2, 3, 4, 5x headcount. And then you've got the opposite, where you've got businesses that are maybe bigger, more established, have been around for a long time, and maybe they've got 20, 30 operators per shift versus 1 or 2. And so maybe they can trim some of the fat there, and maybe they can trim some of the guards in the field, or look at their program data and say, maybe we don't need fixed guards at all of these posts, but based on actual data from our environment, we could do with fixed posts here and a higher quality rover here. And it's very hard to make those data-driven decisions today. And that's something that not specific to the AI operator, but that HiveWatch has been enabling for our customers for the last few years.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of times I work with security end users, and it's mostly always the same. It's we don't have enough budget, we don't have what we want, and the company doesn't listen to us. They don't buy into risk. And I think we talked about this in our last session, but I find that, like you said, the risk is really, really, really hard to sell, and they have to focus on operational improvement. And this is an opportunity to get that narrative that's always been so difficult to articulate with traditional security systems. That gives them potentially the program they've always dreamed of, because they can be very much limited to their products. If they have all analog, there's a big difference there with no analytics, right? Versus a system that's IP based or something like that. So the more things change, the more they say the same. I mean, we still go after trying to push risk, or maybe we need to sell it a different way. We need to get creative in a different way, when really root cause is I just don't have the right tools that open up more opportunities for me. And it seems
100%.
like that's going to be a new discussion over the coming years with advanced tech like this. So when we think in terms of incident documentation, the AI operator promises, I think it promises record keeping. And I might have pulled this from a comment that was mentioned, I think, from one of you. How does this benefit security teams during audits, compliance checks, and incident reviews, if at all?
It's really a big thing. And this goes back to what I talked about earlier in terms of the AI is documenting its thought process, the actions it's taking, and the why. And that all becomes a part of the incident summary, the incident management history, the incident report. without the operator having to go in and like log all of the actions and transfer it to a daily activity report or an incident report. Like that work's already getting done. And so you're getting sort of multiple birds with one stone there, in that not only is the AI using the model to determine what's going on and take its next actions, but it's also starting to build the documentation around what you would expect a guard and an operator to historically do manually.
So auto recording. So if there was an audit, right, a third party wanted to come in and say like, hey, have you been attending to all of your alarms? All of this is documented to show that basically the report card,
everything is documented. From the the analysis to the steps taken to the reason why it was resolved or escalated.
You guys live on a platform level, so big benefit is that you're aggregating across all these systems. Like without that bridge, now they got to go do the same thing with all these systems that have different outputs. Maybe, hopefully it's all Excel, but even at that, it's still a mess, right? A jumbled mess in some cases. And so, being at that platform level is a good benefit of aggregation, of being an interoperable source. But then on top of that, it seems like you have the AI operator that's being able to put them in a better position that at the audit date comes, they're going to look good.
Yeah. And it's super easy to be able to pull and configure.
Yeah. Compliance tends to be a huge thing for our customers. So that's really important. A lot of our customers operate in compliance-based industries. And so having that available is not just a good security practice, it's essential to their business operations.
So let's talk future proofing. How does the AI operator position companies to stay ahead in an evolving threat landscape while maintaining operational resilience?
Well, for me, I think how customizable it is in terms of the changing threat landscape for a customer is as simple as updating an SOP on the software side. And so like what is a threat today may not be a threat tomorrow, or what isn't a threat today may be a threat tomorrow, may be a better way to say that. And so we don't have to go retrain a new model for the new threat. We change the SOP, and how the AI interprets and responds is instantly updated accordingly.
Did that exist before the AI operator, or is this a new capability?
This is a new capability. It gives you a ton of flexibility and the most amount of leverage. So even if you had unlimited human operators to be able to detect like something new, you'd have to go and train each one of these individual folks. Now you can just do it yourself as a program manager.
Nice. So let's start to wrap up. I want to talk and end on HiveWatch's vision for the AI operator. So as we look ahead, how do you see the AI operator evolving, and what role will it play in shaping the future of enterprise physical security?
We see that there's a lot of opportunity here. Right now, we're focused really on the response, but the value of HiveWatch being connected to all of these systems gives us the ability to take further action with other customer systems. We have a lot of access to the underlying hardware data to make other diagnoses or analyses or recommendations. And so we think the AI operator is just the start. AI has a unique advantage to be able to process so much more data in a few seconds than a human can. So imagine being able to give the log level hardware data or some other types of large amounts of data at like a larger scale to be processed specifically at one point. Maybe it's what's happened. Maybe it's an instant camera tour where you can see what's happening all at this facility right now, and then getting an accurate like representation of that when there's a critical incident going on to be able to mobilize your people on the ground. We think that this is just the beginning.
Hey, drop.